I never thought humiliation could echo louder than applause, but that day it did. The words still ring in my head, sharp and stinging, like the slap of cold air that hit me when I walked out of that meeting room. My name is Emily Carter, 29 years old, project coordinator at Viridian Analytics, a data consulting firm where numbers rule and egos thrive. I'd always believed hard work spoke louder than politics, until Samantha Blake, my manager, decided to make an example out of me. It was supposed to be a routine Monday briefing, a quick project update before our client presentation later that week. I'd spent the entire weekend preparing the report, double-checking numbers, fine-tuning slides, and running last-minute simulations just to make sure everything was perfect. I wanted Samantha to be proud. She was my mentor once, sharp, confident, someone I admired. She'd taught me how to hold my ground in meetings and how to speak with precision, not emotion. But somewhere along the line, something shifted. Maybe it was when my work started drawing praise from upper management. Maybe it was when clients started CCing me directly instead of going through her. Whatever it was, admiration turned to distance, and distance turned to hostility. That morning, the conference room was packed, a mix of senior executives, team leads, and even the regional director visiting from Chicago. Samantha stood at the front in her usual steel gray blazer, her arms crossed like a queen before judgment. When she called my name, I straightened my blazer, took a breath, and walked up with confidence, or at least what was left of it. "Emily," she began, her tone sweet but sharp, "why don't you explain this little discrepancy to everyone?" My heart dropped. Discrepancy? She clicked to the next slide, a data chart, the one I'd finalized at 2 a.m. the night before. Except now, it looked wrong, numbers misaligned, trends reversed, a glaring error sitting right in the middle. "This," she said, turning toward the room, "is what happens when someone rushes through their work without checking it properly." The room went still. I froze. My throat tightened as heat flushed through my face. I wanted to explain, to tell her I'd verified everything twice, that the version I'd sent was flawless. But before I could, she cut in, her smile polite, her words venomous. "We value excellence here at Viridian, not carelessness," she said, glancing at me, then at everyone else. "Let this be a lesson." A few chuckles echoed from the back. Someone whispered. My stomach twisted. I'll fix it right away," I managed to say, my voice trembling. Samantha gave a slight, mocking smile. "Let's hope so." That was it. No defense, no second chance, just public humiliation dressed as professional accountability. When the meeting ended, I stayed behind, pretending to gather my notes while everyone filed out. Samantha didn't even look at me. She was already chatting with the director, laughing like nothing had happened. As soon as they left, I opened my laptop to check the file. My version was perfect. The one she'd used, the one on the projector, wasn't mine. The data had been altered. Subtly, but deliberately. Someone had tampered with it. A chill crawled down my spine. For a moment, I told myself it couldn't be her. Maybe IT uploaded the wrong file. Maybe I'd sent the wrong attachment. Mistakes happen, right? But then, later that day, I overheard two colleagues whispering near the coffee machine. "She really went after Emily today." "Yeah, brutal." I heard Samantha's been looking for a reason to replace her. Replace me? That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at the email chain I'd sent 2 days earlier, the one with the final report attached. I opened it. My file was intact. Timestamped. Verified. The only way the version she used could have changed was if someone edited it after I sent it. And the only person with access? Samantha. Still, I couldn't bring myself to believe it. She'd guided me when I first joined, helped me get my first promotion, even gave me advice over after-work drinks. She wasn't a villain, she was human. Maybe she made a mistake. Maybe I was overthinking it. But when I scrolled further down the email thread, I noticed something strange. Hidden in the CC line of the client correspondence, an address I didn't recognize. A private one. Not her work email. My gut twisted. Something wasn't right. As I sat there under the dim light of my desk lamp, the cursor blinking over her name, I felt a quiet, heavy certainty settle over me. the kind that starts as intuition and grows into dread. I didn't know it then, but Samantha's little stunt in that meeting was just the beginning. Her emails, the ones she thought no one would ever see, would do the rest. And when they did, she'd regret ever trying to humiliate me. For the next few days, I convinced myself that the meeting incident was just a misunderstanding. Mistakes happen, right? Samantha was under pressure, the project was high stakes, and maybe she'd just grabbed the wrong version of the file in a rush. That's what I told myself every time the humiliation replayed in my head. But my gut wouldn't quiet down. It whispered things my mind didn't want to hear. The shift was subtle at first. Samantha, once warm and collaborative, became distant, cold in her tone, clipped in her emails, and selective in who she praised. She stopped looping me into client updates and started giving major responsibilities to Lena, one of the newer analysts. Lena was talented, sure, but inexperienced. She'd joined barely 3 months ago. And yet, Samantha suddenly treated her like her protege, inviting her to lunch meetings, copying her on executive correspondence, even giving her credit for ideas that I'd presented in earlier drafts. The first time it happened, I thought I'd misheard. We were in a team huddle when the regional director mentioned how Lena's proposal impressed the client. I looked up from my notepad, confused. The proposal he was referring to was my own presentation, the same one I'd spent 2 late nights perfecting. Lena smiled, awkward but silent. And Samantha? She just nodded, a faint smirk tugging at her lips. That night, I stayed at the office late to catch up on reports. Most people had already left, the fluorescent lights casting a pale, lonely glow across the empty cubicles. I walked past Samantha's office, the door half open, and heard her voice. Yes, the numbers look solid. No, Emily won't be joining that client call. I'll have Lena handle it. My name hung in the air like a bruise. I froze, heart pounding, straining to listen. No, she's good, just not the right fit for this one, Samantha said, her tone light, casual, as if discussing the weather. Clients respond better to fresh faces. Fresh faces. That stung more than the public humiliation ever did. When she walked out of the office moments later, she nearly bumped into me. Still here, she asked, her tone sugar-coated. Just finishing the Q3 analysis, I said, forcing a smile. Good, she replied, eyes flicking briefly toward my screen. Let me know when you're done. I'll review it in the morning, assuming it's all accurate this time. That word. Accurate. She let it hang there like bait. I nodded, pretending not to notice the dig. But inside, something was breaking, not just trust, but certainty. Over the next week, the tension thickened. Samantha's once friendly messages became curt and overly formal. Every task I submitted came back with nitpicking comments. Reformat this. Double-check your math. I'm not convinced by this projection. It didn't matter how perfect the work was, she found something to criticize. And yet, with Lena, it was the opposite. Even when Lena made obvious errors, Samantha brushed them off with a light chuckle. She's still learning, she'd say, giving her the kind of grace she'd never offered me. By Friday, I started to feel paranoid. Maybe I was overanalyzing everything. Maybe I was slipping up, too distracted by the embarrassment, too desperate to prove myself. That's what I told myself as I redid yet another report at midnight. But then came the second red flag. Monday morning, I received a forwarded email from a client asking for clarification about a data miscommunication. Attached was a spreadsheet, one I'd never seen before, with my name listed as the author. It was riddled with errors. When I rushed to Samantha's office to explain, she didn't even look up from her laptop. Emily, she sighed, this is becoming a pattern. It's not mine, I said quickly. I never sent that file. Check the metadata. The author tag was changed. Are you suggesting someone tampered with your work? Her voice dripped with feigned surprise. That's a serious accusation. I'm just saying something doesn't add up. She finally looked at me calm, unreadable. Maybe focus less on conspiracy theories and more on quality control. We can't afford another mistake. My chest tightened. She wasn't defending me, she was framing me. Subtly, quietly, but undeniably. For the rest of the day, whispers followed me through the corridors. People smiled politely but looked away too quickly. My inbox filled with cautious messages. Hey, just checking if you sent that file? The kind that screamed doubt. When I got home that night, I opened my laptop and stared at the glowing screen. There it was again, that strange private email address buried deep in one of Samantha's forwarded threads. The same one I'd seen before. It didn't belong to the company. It wasn't tied to any client. Why was she copying it on confidential data reports? My mind raced, connecting fragments, the mistaken presentation, the favoritism, the sabotaged files, the private email. And yet, part of me still clung to denial. Samantha had been my mentor. Maybe she was protecting me from something. Maybe she was just under stress. But as I lay in bed, my mind replaying her every cold glance and calculated smile, I couldn't shake the feeling that something dark was unfolding, and I was standing right in the middle of it. It wasn't just paranoia anymore. It was instinct. And it was screaming that I was in danger, not of losing my job, but of being destroyed, piece by piece, by the person I once trusted most. It happened on a Wednesday, the kind of ordinary day that shouldn't carry the weight of betrayal. The morning started quietly, with the low hum of computers and the occasional clatter of coffee mugs. I was at my desk, lost in another round of damage control, double-checking a client report that, somehow, had been misplaced again. The air felt heavier than usual, charged with something I couldn't name. At 10:37 a.m., an email popped up on my screen. It was from IT support, subject line, account review notice. My pulse quickened. The message was simple. Per internal request, we've completed an access audit for shared files. Attached is a log of all user activity for your folder this month. I didn't remember requesting an audit, but someone must have. Out of curiosity, I opened the spreadsheet. Rows and rows of access records filled the screen. And there, scattered throughout the dates, was one name that shouldn't have been there. Samantha Blake. She had been entering my folders late at night, sometimes at 1 o'clock, 2 a.m., accessing files I hadn't even opened yet. Files that later accidentally contained errors. Files that had ruined my credibility. For a moment, I just stared. My mind tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was just reviewing my work? Maybe she had permission as my manager? But the deeper I scrolled, the clearer it became. She wasn't just reading my files. She was copying them. Each time she accessed a report, she downloaded it, renamed it, and sent it to that same private email address. The same one I'd noticed before. My stomach dropped. I clicked through my sent items, searching for every instance of that project. It didn't take long to find the truth. The client proposals, the analytics drafts, the data models, all of them had ended up in presentations Samantha later led herself. She hadn't just humiliated me. She'd been stealing my work for months. And using it as her own. The realization hit me like a blow. Every compliment she'd received from upper management, every promotion rumor, every strategic breakthrough she'd proudly announced in meetings. All of it built on the hours I'd poured into my projects, the nights I'd spent chasing perfection, the loyalty I'd given her without question. I sat there frozen, hands trembling over the keyboard. The office noise faded into nothing. I couldn't even feel my body, just the hollow ache inside my chest where admiration used to live. How long had she been planning this? Since that first compliment from the director? Since she started grooming Lena to replace me? I opened another email thread, one I'd been CC'd on months ago, and suddenly it all aligned. Samantha had been forwarding my work from her private email to a client under her own name. Then, when questions came up or results fell short, she redirected blame toward me. The incompetent coordinator. The unreliable one. She'd been using me as a scapegoat. A shield. And when I finally started noticing, she decided to crush me publicly, to erase any trace of doubt that she wasn't the golden manager everyone believed her to be. My throat tightened as tears blurred my vision. Not just from anger, but from something far worse, shame. I should have seen it. The small remarks. The subtle changes. The way she'd begun isolating me from clients. It had all been right there, waving red flags I refused to see because I wanted to believe in her. I remembered the first time she told me, "I see potential in you, Emily." I had felt so proud, so validated. Now those words felt like poison. At some point, my hand reached for my phone. I typed a message to HR, then deleted it. I wasn't ready. Not yet. I needed to be sure. I needed proof, undeniable, unshakable proof that could burn through her lies. So I kept digging. By evening, I had a folder full of evidence, timestamps, forwarded emails, access logs, and a few suspicious message chains between her and Lena. In one, Samantha wrote, "Don't worry about Emily's part. I'll handle her if she gets curious." Handle me. The words crawled under my skin. When I finally leaned back in my chair, the tears were gone. My eyes were dry, my pulse steady. The grief had burned itself out, leaving something colder, something sharp. All day, people had walked past me, none of them knowing that my entire world had just shifted. That the woman I once admired had turned my career into her playground. That the humiliation she orchestrated in that meeting wasn't spontaneous, it was strategic. I shut my laptop slowly, the faint hum of the fan fading into silence. The reflection staring back at me on the dark screen didn't look broken anymore. Just still. Because in that moment, the shock had turned into clarity. The pain had turned into focus. And beneath the surface of that calm, something powerful stirred, the quiet kind of anger that doesn't shout or cry. It plans. Samantha thought she'd buried me in humiliation. She thought my silence meant defeat. But she'd made one critical mistake. She'd taught me how to play her game, and now I finally understood the rules. I didn't sleep that night. Not a second. The glow of my laptop screen painted the room in pale blue light as I sat there, replaying every moment, every conversation, every look, every time Samantha said she believed in me. The lies, the manipulation, the way she used my trust as a weapon. By sunrise, the tears were gone. I felt emptied, like all the hurt had drained out, leaving behind something steady, almost eerily calm. For hours, I just stared out the window, watching the city wake up. Cars moved below, people hurried to work, and somewhere in that blur of life, I realized something simple but life-changing. No one was coming to save me. Not HR. Not my coworkers. Not justice. Because people like Samantha didn't fall on their own, they were protected, praised, and promoted. If I wanted to set things right, I had to stop waiting for fairness and start fighting for it. And that meant using her own arrogance against her. The next morning, I walked into Viridian Analytics with the kind of quiet confidence that made people look twice. My face was calm, my steps measured, but inside, every cell in my body buzzed with purpose. Samantha was in the break room, sipping coffee with that same fake smile she wore like perfume. When our eyes met, she gave a polite nod, as if she hadn't just dismantled my reputation piece by piece. "Morning, Emily," she said smoothly. "Feeling better after last week's slip-up?" "Much better," I replied, matching her tone. "Thanks for checking in." Her smirk faltered just a fraction. She wasn't expecting composure, she was expecting defeat. Good. Let her underestimate me. The day moved in slow motion. I sat through meetings, took notes, and even complimented Lena's presentation, the one Samantha had clearly written for her. But every move I made that day had a purpose. Every file I touched, every email I sent, was part of a growing collection of evidence, a paper trail that would eventually burn through her web of lies. During lunch, I made my move. I stopped by the IT department, not as a victim, but as a professional seeking clarity. "Hey, could you help me verify something?" I asked, flashing a tired but friendly smile. "I'm doing a workflow audit, and I need to confirm which users have accessed the analytics folders in the last quarter. Just so we can clean up permissions." The IT analyst, a quiet guy named Marcus, nodded. "Sure, I can pull that for you." Shouldn't take long. When he sent the file later that afternoon, I had exactly what I needed, months of access logs, each one tying Samantha's credentials to my private work files. But I wasn't going to expose her yet. Not like this. Because revenge, I realized, wasn't about striking first, it was about striking right. That night, I took a walk through the city after work. The air was cool, the streets humming with life. My reflection followed me in every glass window, tired eyes, but something new behind them. Strength. Focus. I thought about how I'd let fear control me, fear of confrontation, fear of losing my job, fear of standing up to someone more powerful. And it hit me. Samantha had only been able to destroy me because I'd given her permission to. Not consciously, not willingly, but through silence. Through doubt. Through believing I wasn't enough to fight back. No more. If she could weaponize perception, so could I. The next morning, I arrived early, before anyone else, and started organizing my strategy. I printed every incriminating email, timestamp, and log. I created a private folder labeled Integrity Review, confidential, and uploaded everything to an encrypted drive. Then I began to rebuild my image from the inside out. I stayed late to help teammates with their projects, offered insights in meetings, and sent updates directly to upper management, professionally, politely, and with quiet precision. Every small win added another crack in the narrative Samantha had built about me. She noticed. By the end of the week, her tone changed. The casual insults stopped. The little digs in meetings became fewer. It wasn't guilt, it was fear. She could sense the shift, but couldn't see where it was coming from. Good. Because I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was preparing. That Friday, as I packed up for the weekend, Samantha walked by my desk. "Emily," she said, her voice oddly hesitant. "You've been doing better lately. Keep it up." I smiled. "Thanks. I plan to." When she left, I opened my laptop one last time and reread one of her stolen emails, the one she'd sent to a client under her name, using my data model. I no longer felt hurt. I felt something far steadier, a deep, grounded certainty that her empire was built on borrowed time. Because here's what Samantha never understood: humiliation doesn't destroy strong people. It refines them. It burns away the weakness, the self-doubt, the need for validation, until all that's left is quiet fire. And I wasn't broken anymore. I was awake. She'd taken my trust, my pride, and nearly my career. Now I was going to take back everything she stole and make sure her own emails did the rest. I learned quickly that revenge isn't a tantrum, it's a strategy. It's chess, not fire. If I wanted to topple Samantha, I had to outthink her at every turn, anticipate where she'd hide, who she'd use, and what arrogance would make her do next. First, I tightened the evidence chain. Marcus from IT became my quiet ally, not because he was heroic, but because he hated sloppy permissions as much as I did. Together we built a timeline. Every download, every forwarded attachment, every private address that appeared in her threads. We sealed it with metadata, timestamps, IP ranges, and a conspicuous pattern. Every time Samantha accessed my files, she forwarded them to that private address within the hour. The pattern read like a confession. But paper and logs alone weren't enough. Samantha was a master at plausible deniability. She loved to smile and call anything a misunderstanding. So I needed her to act, to make a move that would expose intent rather than create doubt. That meant bait. And bait had to be irresistible. I created one. A new client deck, polished, elegant, and just flawed enough to be believable. A tiny, almost invisible adjustment in the projection model, a subtle variable that would, if copied, produce a slightly different recommendation in the final slide. It would be noticed only by someone doing the math. Someone like a manager trying to pass it off as their own. I labeled the file with a soft confidentiality marker, for internal review only, Emily Carter. I uploaded it to the shared folder and then, crucially, set the folder permissions to notify me when anyone downloaded that specific file. Marcus helped configure the alerts to ping my phone and email with each access. If Samantha took the bait, I would know the second she did. Next, I played the social angles. Lena was an easy wedge. She wasn't malicious, she was ambitious and lonely in a way that made her loyal to whoever showed her attention. Instead of confronting her, I leaned in. I invited her to coffee under the pretense of mentorship, praised small wins, and mentioned, almost offhand, that I was doing a peer integrity check to help streamline workflows. I watched her eyes for signs of guilt or deflection. She was careful, but curious. Curiosity could be nudged. I started seeding small, Innocuous rumors, strategic whispers about an upcoming audit, a listening session the regional director wanted to hold, a hypothetical review of client interactions. Nothing that could be pinned on me, just enough to make people who'd forwarded files with private addresses nervous. Samantha loved control. The idea that someone might be watching would prod her to act, not to retreat. Arrogance makes people move where they shouldn't. Meanwhile, I built alliances. I reached out to 2 quiet senior analysts who'd always been polite but distant. I helped them with tricky datasets, offered suggestions that saved them time, and quietly thanked them for small favors. People remember kindness when it's wrapped in confidence. By the time the audit rumors started spinning, they were the kind of colleagues who would question a sudden, unexplained change in credit or ownership on a report. Their doubt could turn into corroboration. I also drafted a calm, clear memo, not accusatory, just factual, addressed to integrity and compliance. It summarized the access logs, highlighted the anomalies, and requested a permissions review. I didn't send it. Not yet. It lived in a draft folder, ready to be sent the moment Samantha moved the way I expected. Having it poised felt like having a loaded net beneath a tightrope, reassurance more than threat. The mental work was just as important as the technical. I practiced my face in the mirror until my composure felt natural. Samantha thrived on spectacle. She wanted public breakdowns, dramatic apologies, visible defeat. So I rehearsed calmness, small smiles, polite nods, neutral tones. Let her think I'd been dulled by humiliation. Let her underestimate the fire that now lay beneath. 2 weeks into the plan, the trap snapped. I noticed a late-night ping. Samantha's credentials had accessed the bait file at 2:14 a.m. The notification hit my phone, bright and small. My chest tightened, not with panic, but with the precise, steady rush of someone who'd been holding their breath for months and finally exhaled. She forwarded the deck to the private address within 10 minutes. Then, in a move that felt almost theatrical, she sent a brief message to a client under her signature, praising our updated recommendations and inviting feedback. She was quick, confident, careless. Perfect. I did nothing rash. I didn't storm into her office. I didn't blast an accusatory email. I waited, breathing slow, eyes on the draft memo, fingers poised. The plan had always been to force her hand, to make her reveal intent in a way that couldn't be blamed on teamwork or stress. Samantha believed I was broken. She thought her humiliation had sealed me off, terrified and silent. Instead, she'd stepped into the thing I'd built for her, a paper trail so tidy it read like testimony, witnesses already primed to corroborate, and a draft complaint that would make the case clinical and undeniable. There's a peculiar kind of calm that comes before the final act of justice, not vindictive, not gleeful, but certain. I felt it then, a low, steady heat in my chest, the kind that makes decisions crisp and fearless. I clicked open the draft memo one last time, checked the attachments, and hit send. I sent the memo at 9:02 a.m. on a Tuesday, not because timing was everything, but because I wanted the moment to be ordinary enough for no one to suspect a show. The subject line was clinical: integrity review, access and attribution anomalies, Emily Carter, Viridian Analytics. Attached were the access logs, the forwarded emails, the client threads, and a short cover letter, a factual, unemotional timeline with one clear ask, a permissions audit, and an internal review. 5 minutes later, the inbox filled. Marcus had already forwarded an annotated copy to compliance with his notes. 2 senior analysts I'd quietly supported replied with supportive messages, noting the discrepancies they'd seen when credit for projects shifted. The regional director, the same man who'd watched Samantha humiliate me months earlier, asked for an immediate meeting. Samantha's phone buzzed. So did mine. Hers, with flurries of texts from allies. Mine, with a single notification from compliance: please attend a meeting at 10 a.m., bring any supporting documents. By the time the conference room filled, the air felt like glass, sharp, clear, impossible to ignore. Samantha arrived 10 minutes late, perfectly coiffed, eyes darting, mask in place. She offered a tight smile to those who greeted her. To me, A cool nod that said more than she intended. She still believed she controlled the choreography. The compliance officer opened the meeting with calm efficiency. This review was prompted by a permissions audit. We've compiled access logs and email threads that show unusual activity surrounding proprietary client materials. He clicked through slides, timestamps, downloads, forwarded addresses. The room watched the glowing screen like a slow-burning reveal. When he reached the slide showing the private address and the chain of forwarded files, a low murmur moved through the room. Samantha's face didn't change. She swallowed and leveled her smile. "There must be an explanation," she said smoothly. "I was reviewing files as part of managerial oversight." He clicked to the next slide, the bait file. "We also included a control file, marked as internal review only, that was accessed and forwarded from your account at 2:14 a.m., then referenced in a client email under your signature." The data point was small, surgical, the kind of evidence that didn't need adjectives. It needed only to exist. Samantha's fingers tightened on her coffee cup. "That's impossible," she began, voice steady but thin. "I didn't," then Marcus spoke. "Quiet, exact. The server logs show the download, Samantha. The IP matches your account. The forwarding occurred within minutes. And the destination email is not a company account." Faces turned. The regional director's jaw tightened. Lena's expression was blank, eyes wide and unfocused. I watched Samantha watch the hole she'd dug widen in front of her. The room smelled faintly of burned paper and cheap perfume. Compliance moved with the slow, inevitable grace of bureaucracy. They called in legal. They placed a temporary hold on external communications from Samantha's account. They notified key clients with a short, sober message: "We are conducting an internal review regarding attribution of recent deliverables. If you've received communications that seem inconsistent with your point of contact, please defer personal changes until we confirm." That phrasing was tiny, but it worked like a cool wash across a fire. Clients began to reply with questions. One by one, names I'd only ever seen in CC lines sent notes asking for clarity. A handful asked for copies of the original attachments, the very files Samantha had passed off as hers. By noon, the media of the office smelled different. People spoke in low voices. The regional director excused Samantha to a private meeting and then walked back into the main room with a folder. He set it on the table with a soft thud and looked straight at me. "Emily," he said, voice a mix of regret and apology, "thank you for bringing this forward. We take these matters seriously." I didn't need to stand. I didn't need to plead. My evidence did the speaking, crisp, cold, and incontrovertible. The compliance officer read aloud a few of the forwarded emails. In them, Samantha's private address appeared like a signature of betrayal, proposals sent under her name, screenshots of my spreadsheets with her annotations, messages to clients holding my models up as our new strategy. Each one landed with the weight of truth. When Samantha emerged from her private meeting, her face was gone, not angry, not tearful, simply hollowed. HR escorted her to her office to collect personal items pending an investigation. Lena followed at a distance, shoulders hunched. Word traveled faster than a rumor. By mid-afternoon, several clients had paused ongoing engagements and asked for reassignment. The director placed a formal hold on Samantha's projects. I felt something tighten in my chest, not the old hot panic, but a cool, clean justice. Watching her walk past my desk, I felt no triumph that resembled glee. Instead, there was a deep, quiet relief, like a storm I'd weathered finally clearing the sky. Her empire of borrowed praise and stolen work collapsed not with the theatrics she loved, but with the small, surgical force of documented truth. As she packed, Lena came to my desk. Her voice was small. "I'm sorry," she said, eyes rimmed red. "I didn't know." "It's okay," I replied. "You were used." She nodded, then left. The office buzz softened into work again, the kind that went on when the immediate scandal settled into procedure. I returned to my desk, opened a blank document, and typed a short note to the clients who'd been affected, calm, professional, and precise, and offered to walk through original findings, step by step. I attached clean copies of my reports, my models, my timestamps. No flourish. No accusation. Just facts. That night, I walked home under a sky washed clear by rain. The city lights looked sharper, cleaner. I thought of Samantha not as a villain in a movie, but as a person who'd made choices that cost her everything she'd built on other people's labor. I didn't feel victory so much as completion. She'd used my trust to build her reputation. Her emails had been the weapon. Her emails, exposed, undeniable, and public, did the rest. I had wanted justice, but what I received felt kinder, truth. And when it arrived, it had the quiet, unsparing precision of a long-planned clock finally striking 12. They say silence has its own sound, a kind of hum that only exists after the storm ends. That's what the office felt like in the days after Samantha's fall. The whispers stopped. The stares softened. People moved differently, slower, more careful, as if the truth that unraveled her had also stripped something false from everyone else. Her office, once full of glass trophies and curated compliments, now stood empty. The plaque with her name had been removed, leaving behind a faint outline on the frosted door. HR called it an ongoing investigation, but everyone knew what that meant. She wasn't coming back. I didn't celebrate. I didn't even smile when the company sent the memo naming me as interim director of analytics. I just sat there for a long time, staring at the words, not because I didn't expect them, but because I finally understood something deeper. Titles can be stolen, credit can be taken, but integrity? That's yours to keep or lose. And I hadn't lost mine. The promotion wasn't the victory. The peace was. For weeks, I'd been walking into that building carrying invisible weight, the doubt, the humiliation, the fear of being silenced again. But when I walked in now, my steps felt grounded. My voice carried. People listened. Even Marcus, who had always stood in the shadows of corporate neutrality, stopped by my desk one morning. "You handled that with class," he said quietly. "Most people would have gone nuclear." I smiled. Nuclear leaves fallout. I just wanted the truth to burn clean. He nodded, a flicker of admiration crossing his face. "Well," he said, "it did." Outside the office, the world didn't pause for my story. Projects resumed. Deadlines loomed. Life moved forward. But something inside me had changed, a switch I couldn't unflip. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was chasing validation. I wasn't trying to prove I belonged. I knew I did. One evening, a message arrived in my inbox, a short, fractured note from a personal email I recognized instantly. I never meant for it to go this far. "I'm sorry." No name, no signature. But she didn't need one. I stared at it for a while, not out of anger, but reflection. The younger version of me, the one who used to crave apologies, explanations, closure, might have written back. Might have demanded answers. But I didn't reply. Because forgiveness, I'd learned, isn't for the one who broke you. It's for the one who survived. Instead, I archived the email and closed my laptop. That weekend, I drove to the coast, a place I hadn't visited since college. The air was cold, salted, alive. I walked barefoot along the shoreline, feeling the waves erase my footprints as fast as I made them. And that's when it hit me, the full circle of it all. Samantha had built her power by erasing my name. But in the end, she became the one erased. That was poetic justice, not loud, not cruel, just perfectly balanced. I stood there for a while, watching the horizon bleed orange into blue, and whispered to the wind, "Thank you." Not to her. Not to the pain. But to the part of me that refused to give up, the quiet, steady voice that said, "Stand tall. Wait. Let truth do the work." Because revenge wasn't about destroying someone else's life. It was about rebuilding mine. When I went back to work, things weren't magically perfect. People still whispered, still chose sides. But I no longer needed anyone's validation. I had earned something rarer, respect. Not the kind you demand, but the kind that stays when the lights dim and the applause fades. Now, when interns come to me nervous, ambitious, full of hope, I tell them the truth no one told me. Protect your work. Document everything. Speak with integrity. And never mistake silence for weakness. And when they ask if I regret what happened, I tell them this: regret. No. I lost fake allies, but I found my real voice. That's a trade I'd make every time. Before I left that evening, I took one last look at the empty office that once belonged to Samantha. The blinds were half drawn, the desk spotless. On the door, the faint outline of her nameplate still lingered, a ghost of ambition built on borrowed trust. I touched the cold glass and whispered, "You taught me how power works and how it ends." Then I turned away. Because some victories don't need applause. They just need peace. And as I walked into the sunset pouring through the glass windows, I thought, she tried to steal my voice, but all she did was teach me how loud truth can be when spoken calmly. That's the kind of justice life delivers, not loud, not fast, but exact. So, to everyone watching this, have you ever been betrayed by someone who wore a smile while cutting you down? Did you rise quietly, gracefully, and let the truth do your talking? Tell me your story in the comments. And if you believe that calm revenge and quiet truth always find their way back, subscribe. Because sometimes, the best revenge is becoming everything they said you couldn't be.